Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, January the 18th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that even though we are a news podcast, we do try to watch our language. However, there may be said sometimes words do fly, and also at the same time, guys, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start off this wonderful midweek? Well, I guess in the world of the GOP and the Republicans, they believe in Me Too when it affects them because, of course, as we've already had reported so long ago, or it feels like so long ago last year, that Trump did get caught with his hand in the cookie jar with multiple classified documents that he himself thought he could declassify, but he couldn't because he thought he had powers of president, which he didn't, which he fought the FBI on because they asked for them, but he refused to give them back, which led to a search and seizure, which all GOP people are still calling a raid. It was not a raid. It was a legalized search and seizure that went through so many checks and balances that it's ridiculous. Now, with all that being said, however, unfortunately, there is a developing story that just seems to not end. Why? Because the GOP are saying, well, it happened to Joe. Why is he getting the same treatment? I wish I could make this up.
President Biden publicly silent about the special counsel's investigation into his handling of classified material.
How do you think that the classified documents got into your boxes?
Ignoring reporters' questions for a fourth straight day, while privately expressing frustration with the growing backlash, according to three sources familiar with the matter. It comes as the White House revealed this weekend additional pages of classified documents were discovered inside the president's Delaware home. So far, the total number of classified records recovered is unclear, with about a dozen identified at Mr. Biden's private office, including, sources tell NBC News, at least one document marked top secret, followed by two batches discovered at the Wilmington residence, including inside the garage. None of those sites are approved to store sensitive government material. The White House now facing intensifying criticism about a lack of transparency. The first classified documents were discovered by Biden attorneys a week before the midterms, but the public was not told until just last week, only following media reports.
The truth is that they suppressed the information before the election so that it would not have impact during the election. The stench of hypocrisy coming from this administration is making the American people sick.
The president's personal attorney insisting they cannot release certain details, quote, relevant to the investigation while it is ongoing. The White House has pledged to cooperate with the special counsel, noting differences in volume and response to the classified records found at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. But some Democrats saying national security may have been jeopardized by where Mr. Biden was storing classified documents.
I don't think we can exclude the possibility without knowing more of the facts.
And Monica, now Republicans want to know who may have had access to the classified documents stored in the president's Delaware home.
That's right, but the White House says those visitor logs simply do not exist. Secret Service does background checks on those who come and go, though they don't keep those records long term, a standard practice for presidents personally.
Okay, so, how do we start this? Yes, President Biden has been found out that during his times as VP and previous holdings in politics that he may have sensitive documents located at his residence. And the only people that are screaming national security, the only people that are screaming, how did this happen? The only people are screaming who had access to these documents. You notice these are GOP people, right? Yes, there are some Democrats that are saying, well, we don't know if national security has been jeopardized. I would say it like this. There's two different ways how this was handled. Trump could have gave them back to National Archives, the Office of National Archives, and it could have been done with. Biden is doing just that. But for a lot of people that don't know, all presidential documents, things of that nature, do go to National Archives. They go there for storage. They go there for security purposes, all the above. No president has ever taken anything of classified nature to their homes until now. That being said, if something is discovered or they do report it, then of course an investigation happens that is conducted by the Office of National Archives. Now, why are we saying this? Because they do these investigations on every president. Every president. Now, has there been politicized that maybe Clinton, maybe Bush 1 or Bush 2, or even President Obama may have had a few documents come through there? Hard to say, because it doesn't get reported. Now, why is this such a big thing? It's a big thing just because Republicans are just salivating at the mouth. They needed something to come back and sit there and say it, because they were ostentatiously silent when it came to Trump and his document issues. Very silent. Because you know what they did? They sat there and said, well, the FBI illegally raided. No, they did not. Trump, you never noticed that no GOP person has ever sat there and said, well, Trump can legally keep those documents. But yet when it came to Biden, oh, we have to know this, we have to know that. This is why I say the level of the GOP is beyond stupidity. Tim Scott, the only black person in the GOP, can't say that now because there is another one, but the very few minority within the GOP is the one sitting there saying, well, America's sick of all this document keeping. I said, okay, well, if he kept seeing, well, again, why don't we allow a process that's been going on for some time now, when presidencies change, to allow to do their investigation? It's not like it's not like with Trump, we're not going to worry about if he has nuclear launch codes, dirt on our allies or enemies, or that he would use them to sell them to the highest bidder and keep himself financed. Well, I guess it would be kind of hard to do since he's already a compromised president and pretty much half the Middle East owns his ass. But are we expecting the same out of Biden? And again, this fuels the GOP tinfoil hat community is what it does. Because they couldn't stop talking about Hunter Biden and his laptop. They couldn't stop talking about Benghazi. Ugh. They couldn't stop talking about things that really doesn't matter. And with this new House of Representatives that's controlled by the GOP, they will launch useless investigations instead of helping out the American public, as they said they would. But this is why I say this is the hypocrisy of it all. Just to really put this to bed, what's going to wind up happening is that there will be an investigation. There's already a special counsel that's already been assigned to this. They will look into it. They will simply say, well, was this a case of mistaken storage or whatnot? And of course, the information within those documents will be vetted. But at the same time, Biden isn't fighting the government on this. The current president isn't fighting anyone. His aides and the people under him are saying, oh, we found these, let's report it. It's not like they're sitting in a container on Mar-a-Lago, simply put, because the president wants to keep, because the former failure-in-chief wants to keep them. That's the big difference. And I'm going to be really honest about this. Unless you find something of detrimental, which again will be, if it is, will be found by those that are assigned to investigate it. For the rest of us, right now, we're wondering about what you're going to do about this inflation, what you're going to do about the income gap in pay and things of that nature that actually really affect us. And of course, the debt ceiling that's going to probably get pushed back again because, well, we are built on unfortunately, this country is built on debt and capitalism. But hopefully, but again, I guess we'll need to move on because apparently the GOP will not. But speaking of the GOP, this was sickening as all get out. And I cannot stress this enough. I guess I shouldn't be surprised since now the GOP is back in control of the House. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar got committee assignments. Yes, that C word she's a C. The reason why I say C word because I can't say what I really want to call her because it's the same person I call Candace Owens. They all fit that 4-letter C word that rhymes with punt. But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, as you can see right there, the man, and how can I stress this ever so nicely? These two idiots. Keep in mind, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she was first elected, that she went head to head with her fellow congressman, that she spouted conspiracy theories from a very favorable for the paranoia website called QAnon. And after all said and done, the Democrats and some Republicans voted to strip her of all committee assignments. As I've been saying since last year, Marjorie Taylor Greene is basically getting paid for doing nothing. Could you imagine you at your job that you don't have to do anything, you have no responsibilities, everything's government funded, and you get paid for it? Marjorie Taylor Greene is living embodiment of I'm just here so I don't get fined. Well, now she's on, and I wish I could make this up, guys. She has been placed on the House Homeland Security Committee, which, again, as you can see there, has jurisdiction over the border. A lot of y'all are going to be wondering, does that mean that she's going to go after current Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas? Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. The answer is yes. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of those folks that is just going to take power for herself, and at the same time will not be up against going after Biden appointed officials within his administration. Keep in mind, we talked about the immigration issue that's still going on. That Title 42 is still enacted. That instead of actually sending judges, lawyers, immigration assistants to really fix the immigration system in America, we're too busy building walls and sending armed guards. And yet we're supposed to be a land of immigrants, although some of us here may or may not come willingly. Just saying, considering that Black History Month is around the corner, just keep that in mind. But again, it's the fact that you can see that the GOP is doing nothing more than to disrupt. They are not really helping to help, because I'm still waiting on a bill to come through that says they're helping the American people. Oh, and if you're wondering about Paul Gosar, he is back on the House Committee of Natural Resources, which, again, that was his previous position. I'm still surprised these two not only got elected, but at the same time were able to get committee assignments. And I'm sorry, it makes me uber nervous and a little scared, because when you have idiots run the asylum, what do you freaking expect? But moving on, guys, another thing that, didn't make any sense, and how can I, oh boy. Okay. So, of course, Martin Luther King holiday just passed to honor one of the iconic civil rights leaders of the civil rights movement, a man whose I Have a Dream speech is immortalized, a man whose every rice cake warrior loves to quote on MLK Day, knowing full well they are the racists we know them to be. Well, a sculpture was unveiled to honor MLK, and I'm gonna be honest, I am surprised, number one, who sculptured it, and number two, who approved this mess.
A monument meant to honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife, Coretta Scott King's legacy, facing some backlash. The Embrace, it's called the Embrace, the statue, was unveiled Friday at Boston Common, where King gave a speech back in 1965. It was inspired by a photograph of the couple hugging after Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 1964. So look at the hands in the picture and then look at that. The art piece, designed by conceptual artist Hank Willis Thomas, only features the couple's arms during the embrace and not their heads, which has sparked a mixed reaction.
It's not the missing heads that's the atrocity, although people glam onto that. It's a stump that looks like a penis. That's a joke.
Look at this. Look, YouTubers, I'm sorry, but that looks like a giant penis right there. I'm sorry, it does.
So you're happy with it?
Oh, over the joke.
There are no plans to modify or change it?
No.
Would you do that if asked?
I mean, by who?
Right.
I mean, because this is a piece that was selected by the people of Boston, and this is not Hank just came and put something. Thousands of people worked on this. Thousands of people actually put it together, and no one saw this, I would say, perverse perspective. And I mean, to bring that to the King's legacy and to dictate the making of art and the celebration of them is really strange for me.
Okay, so let's unpack this here for a second, because my God. First off, he said many people in Boston helped on this. I'm not saying there's a lot of black people in Boston, but from my understanding, Boston is where you come for the Celtics and stay for the racism. And I guess I'm more shocked that number one, this got to pass. I mean, look, I'm all for artistic expression. I am all for designing however you choose to. I am all for designing to express yourself. But this ain't it. This is not it. Not in the least. Because again, the picture of the embrace, the arm first and foremost, I mean, from any angle doesn't look right. Number two, would have been better with heads. But number three, I like the number three option. Scrap that, start all over again. I'm like, why is, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. But why is it when it comes to people of color, specifically when it comes to our civil rights leaders and icon heroes that we revere as icons, why do we get the most messed up sculptures in human history? I mean, generals in the South. I'm in Tennessee. Generals in the South get the full-blown horse, 2 feet raised in the air, sword in hand, looking proud of their Southern racism and hatred. But at least they get a full statue. We get arms, the embrace. This is supposed to symbolize Martin Luther King and his wife Coretta Scott King. What the frack? It doesn't. And I can see why a lot of people are just like, this isn't it. And I said it before on my social media that people of melanin were not contacted about this, because come on now. When you know you're about to put something out there and you want feedback, you think somebody would go there and be like, bruh, this is not going to get accepted well. And I get it. As an artist, you want to defend your work. You want to stand up for your work. I get all that. But if your work is to represent something of great importance, it should be great. It shouldn't be experimental. It shouldn't look like a piece of caca. Because the first time I looked at this, I'm like, this looks like pieces of caca put together in a symmetric area. It looks like a bowel movement gone wrong. And if you look at the internet, because the internet's undefeated, they found other ways to use the embrace. But honestly, that isn't it. Nowhere in the shape or form of it is. It is honestly caca. And for it to be bronzed, I'm just saying that Martin Luther King statue in Atlanta, Georgia has a lot more poise than this. But again, this is why I always sit there and say, if you're going to do something, consult with your people first. That way you're not out here looking like a plum fool and making us look bad. But speaking of things looking bad, guys, unfortunately we have 2 stories. Both of them are involving gun control. Reason being because in this particular one, a toddler was able to get a hold of a handgun and leave their residence, knocking on the door. Now, I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know what's more creepy these days. A toddler armed with a gun knocking on your door, or the fact that he was able to find one and just as easily walk out the front door. And I wish I could make this up.
So it looked like a real gun, I assume. Now does it have a silk gold or a orange tip?
No, it's chrome, black, looked like a large 45.
Hello, Beach Road Police. Well, we're here because the downstairs neighbor said they saw your son running around with something they thought was a silver handgun. No, not even like a toy one?
Yeah. All right, we have video of your kid holding a gun, so do you have a gun? I've never brought a gun in this house. If there is, it's my cousin.
Thank you.
Okay, so that part is crazy. Number one, the reason why it's crazy is because, first off, how do you not know in your own home? How do you not know in your own home that you don't have a firearm, or you know the location of one? That's the crazy part. Because again, I'm a firearms owner. In my mind, first off, security is paramount, location is paramount, risk mitigation is paramount. I mean, as a firearms owner and a plus that I'm around children, you always are thinking keep it out of their reach, mitigate every way that they can get to it, and make it as safe as humanly possible. That should be every firearms owner's directives. But again, this man not only neglected the child because the child got out, the child did get out, but the child got out with a firearm. And then you can see the police questioning him and going, I didn't have a gun. Now my cousin may have one. The fact that you sat there and said my cousin may have one, you do know it's your house. If it's caught in your house, you're liable for it. That's what a lot of people don't understand. That's why you should be a little bit more careful about who you let in your house, because you also got to have questions about what they bring in your house. Because again, it's gonna fall on you. I mean, the fact that he only got child neglect. I mean, he kind of got off easy. I'm just saying, because that situation could have been way worse. And I do mean way worse. Even more so, the next situation, which again makes me wonder, are we doing enough for gun control? Especially with this case of a 14-year-old shooting an 11-year-old boy.
Neighbors say a boy as young as 11 years old was shot and killed at this apartment complex on the 3300 block of Southern Oaks Boulevard in southern Dallas.
It appears to be just a beef between two female juveniles that led to a deadly outcome.
Around 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, Dallas police say a fight broke out between two teenage girls.
One of the female juveniles retrieved a handgun and fired toward the direction of the other female that she was fighting with. However, the shot missed that juvenile and struck a male juvenile bystander.
The boy was rushed to an area hospital and later died. Police say the teenage girl ran to a nearby apartment complex and was later taken into custody. This news hit hard for Cassie Sheffield, who lives around the corner.
I find it very sad and disheartening of all the violence, the senseless violence, especially with the young people.
Cassie is with the organization No More Violence.
It shook me, young people is getting younger and younger, the victims and the perpetrators.
The big question remains:
how are these young people getting a hold of so many weapons?
Cassie is begging the public to please help one another.
I pray for more help in the community, from the community. All this don't tell, I don't want to get involved. It needs to stop.
Needs to stop because the family of the young boy killed is left heartbroken.
My heart and my thoughts and prayers go out to the family.
In southern Dallas.
So again, it's like, now as tragic as it is, the first thing that people are going to be asking is, how was this 14-year-old able to get a hold of a firearm? Because I said before, a lot of people don't understand that there's a reason why we keep saying that gun laws need to change. There's a reason why we keep saying that. Because number one, there's not enough punishment for those when a gun is involved. Number two, the laws and registrations and background checks can deter a lot of things. But also, the biggest thing out of these two stories that I want to point out is neglect. I mean, a toddler was able to get a hold of a loaded gun, which means that more than likely they saw this gun before and know where it is. A 14-year-old goes to an apartment and comes out with a gun. Tells me that she knows there's a gun in that apartment and knows how to get to it. I'm sorry, assuming it's a she. They know how to get to it. So again, two cases right there that of firearm safety was lacking. But at the same time, in one case, a life was lost. In another case, it could have been way worse. But at the same time, the neglect and the actions it needs to resuscitate some type of response where gun owners will be a little bit more careful about their ownership. Not to say that every gun owner won't do that. A lot of gun owners out there are very militant about making sure that the ammo and the firearms are put out of children's reaches. You guys are not the ones I'm talking about. It's the ones where if your child is able to find the handgun loaded, whether you have one in the chamber or not, if a child can get a hold of it, that tells me that you really need to be put to the extent of the law as an example to be made out of. But just saying, I can keep on going on the fact that gun laws need to change in America, because the guns that are actually causing damage are no longer the legal guns. They're the legal guns that people purchase, but seem to forget that training goes along with them, or actually should be required to go along with, in my opinion. But moving right along, guys, just to go back in the GOP for a second. Imagine you were running for the GOP and you lost, and you decided, instead of going off into that good night back to whatever hole you came out of, you decide that you're going to go confront your Democratic opposites, even more so that you might even threaten violence. And I wish this part I could make up, but unfortunately, it's very true.
Details tonight on an escalation of extremism, with NBC News learning the alleged ringleader of a plot to shoot at Democratic officials confronted some of them weeks before, tracking them down in person after losing a state election.
He was pretty aggressive.
Then in December, County Commissioner Adrian Barboa came home to this.
4 shots through the front door, 2 shots through my partner's vehicle. So yeah, it was shocking and scary.
And you said you were with your granddaughter just hours before?
That was the most terrifying, as I kept thinking, this is through our front door, and you could see the direct path where it went out my back door. And I had literally been there playing with my granddaughter just 2 hours before.
At another official's home, one bullet landed in her daughter's bedroom wall, so close to the sleeping 10-year-old that sheetrock dust was blown onto the girl's face, according to newly released arrest documents. The suspect, Solomon Pena, set to be charged with orchestrating a string of attacks. Accused of paying 4 men to shoot the homes of 4 state and local Democratic officials over the past month in what authorities described as an orchestrated plot.
An attack on an elected official is an attack on democracy. Whether or not it's a Republican or a Democrat, it does not matter.
No one was hurt, but Pena, a Republican, is a Donald Trump supporter and, like the former president, an election denier. Even though no fraud was found in New Mexico, officials say, Pena was apparently adamant he should have won a race he lost in a landslide, 74 to 26%. His campaign has not responded to a request for comment. The attacks coming at a time of growing concern over politically motivated violence, experts pointing to an uptick over the past 5 years, and threats to members of Congress spiking tenfold since 2016.
We're seeing threats, intimidation, and actual violence skyrocketing on the right.
Dangerous divisions and a community on edge.
And Hallie, the suspect expected in court tomorrow.
Yeah, Lester, for his first court appearance in this case, expected to face multiple charges, including conspiracy. The district attorney is also not ruling out the possibility of a more serious charge of attempted murder, just given the nature of these shootings.
But you know what they're not saying, guys? You know what they're really not saying that I wish they would say? Terrorist. Terrorism. You know what kills me? Why is it that the same thing can happen overseas? It's terrorism. The same thing that happens here in the States, terrorism's not even mentioned. Here's my thing. You lost an election. Then you decided to go on this hit list of taking out your Democratic opposites. You didn't talk, you wanted to kill them. And not just one person. Even more so that some actions did cause shots to be fired. I'm sorry, that is terrorism. When you decide to go after a group of people for anything but the fact that, again, you were a Trump supporter, which is, again, I think there's a pattern with these Trump supporters that keep telling y'all. You were a Trump supporter, an election denier, and you swore up and down that you thought you won your own election, even though you did not. Who does that remind you of? And even more so, when you lost, you decide that you're going to take action because you didn't like the outcome. Who does that remind you of? Again, the homegrown terrorists are increasing. And the only way that they're going to get dealt with is that we need to actually use the word that describes them best: domestic terrorism. Even more so, they should be treated like terrorists, not treated like a person who is misunderstood or disgruntled, or as the GOP love to say, well, this is just letting you know how crucial mental health is. Yes, when it comes to one of your own, but to anybody else, they're just bad apples. Again, what is it? My thing is, what is it going to take for someone to finally say, yes, we need to treat this as domestic terrorism? That's what I want to know. But speaking of things I would like to know, of course, switching this back to inflation, as we know, everything's gone up but your paycheck. But recently at grocery stores, a lot of people and those on social media are joking about eggs for a specifically good reason. The price of eggs has doubled, if not tripled.
This morning, with grocery prices, especially eggs, putting a bigger dent in Americans' wallets, analysts have high hopes for the new government report on inflation due out today. It's expected to show consumer prices last month rose 6.5% compared to a year ago. That's encouraging when compared to the 7.1% increase in November, but not nearly enough relief for most shoppers.
It's just too much. It's too much. I don't want to buy any. I can't afford it.
Overall, food prices rose about 12% in the last year, but eggs have been a whole different story, with prices more than doubling, even tripling in some areas. Shoppers at one store in New York reporting a carton of eggs now costs more than $11. Restaurants say they can't keep up.
We used to get a case for about $27, and now we're getting them for about $150.
It's not just inflation. The worst bird flu outbreak in years has taken a toll on the industry, coupled with high demand during the recent holiday baking season, leading to shortages in some areas. The Agriculture Department says bird flu has reduced the egg-laying hen population by more than 40 million.
If the egg price still so high, we will have to increase the price again.
Last week, I did a lot of custards and stuff like that, so I didn't do any muffins because you have to find that toss-up between what are we going to be able to offer.
The good news is some experts believe egg prices may have peaked, but they're expected to remain high through spring.
As for the inflation report due out today, if the news isn't good, expect the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates yet again.
So, again, egg prices, boy, look, I'm going to be honest about this. It's hard to sit there and explain that a carton of eggs that usually goes for $2 is now $7 or $11, because that affects everything. I mean, eggs is like, for people that love breakfast, your favorite restaurant spot or even Waffle House will now be increasing prices more than likely, because you know why? They have to pass on that to the consumer, because they always do that. Whenever things are increasing, they want to keep their profits, but in order to do so, they make the customer pay more. And for a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to buy eggs. Eggs is too freaking high. Or if you're like some people, I'll just have chickens on my place and get my eggs the old fashioned way, which again, nothing wrong with that, self-sustaining and all that. but these companies are making record profits. This goes back, you know what this does? This goes back to the oil scare when Russia, being the number 3 producer of oil in the world, was thinking about cutting off its supply to its European counterparts. Keep in mind, oil prices shot through the roof. Before OPEC, before President Biden started releasing from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, again, oil prices were high. But you know who was making record profits? Oil companies. Exxon, BP, Chevron, all of those guys. Record profits across the board. Not one, and it was brought up one time about a windfall profits tax, because you guys are making money hand over fist right now, money that you will never be taxed on. But why not? I mean, here's the thing. The American people are getting so beat up and strained and drained and keep on getting their, things cut from them. Yet the only people that are winning in this day and age are corporations. Corporations and investors are winning. But yet a windfall profits tax, they, as GOP would love to put it, this would kill job creation. Yet the whole trickle-down Reaganomics thing is really bullshit. But I keep saying this the entire time. Now you have companies out there like Tyson and all those other places that have certain farms where they have hen-laying eggs, again, making record profits. But at the same time, they're not paying the taxes on it. And I don't think that's questions being asked enough in Congress regarding that. I really do not think it is. But moving right along, this other thing I keep on saying, guys, you don't think that the American dream right now is hard to get now that we finally, most recently, had a bank admit to redlining, which is a practice that literally keeps minorities from owning homes by raising prices in areas that make them too deemed unfavorable to get bank financing. A bank has just admitted this, and you'll be surprised about what the penalty was.
Record settlement over alleged discriminatory practices in housing. City National Bank has agreed to a record settlement after the Justice Department accused it of refusing to issue mortgages in predominantly Black and Latino communities. Faith Abube is in Los Angeles with more. Good morning, Faith.
Good morning to you, Michael. This is a historic settlement for several reasons. The U.S. Justice Department forcing Los Angeles-based City National Bank to pay an unprecedented $31 million, accusing the bank of systematically avoiding giving loans to people in predominantly Black and Latino LA County neighborhoods between 2017 and at least 2020. The DOJ saying the bank even went as far as discouraging them from getting the loans in the first place, alleging that it was all part of an illegal and racist practice called redlining. Now, as part of that settlement, City National, which some people call the Bank of the Stars, has agreed to put almost all of that $31 million towards funding loan subsidies. It'll also open at least one new branch in those communities with at least 4 mortgage loan officers. Of course, this is all subject to court approval. While City National Bank officials are denying any wrongdoing, saying in a statement to ABC News that we disagree with the allegations, but nonetheless support the DOJ in its efforts to ensure equal access to credit for all consumers, regardless of their race. And Michael, this is a big deal, the largest redlining settlement in DOJ history. Officials hope it sends a strong message to other lenders. Michael?
Yeah, it is a big deal indeed. Their faith in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they're making changes to level the home buying field as well.
They are, Michael. We've reported on allegations of racism in the home appraisal process, where the same home is appraised thousands of dollars more for a white family than a Black family. HUD is now announcing a new process that allows people seeking government financing to request a review of their appraisal using specific steps if they suspect a racial bias. So HUD is now saying that this new change will actually make the process fair.
Okay, so again, this bank has just been found out, City National Bank in Los Angeles, paid $31 million in a settlement because they were caught redlining. It is 2023. Redlining was a process that was done way back in the 1940s. Started off in the 1940s and still being used to this day. And we just saw a bank just admit to this. And again, $31 million. It kind of doesn't feel right, doesn't it? that this bank is still allowed to operate. I put them in the same vein as Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has committed a massive identity theft multiple times and only paid fines. CEO or no one else actually saw any jail time. Bank is still allowed to run as if everything is fine. And yet nobody sees a problem with this. See, this is the problem I have with this. That with City National Bank, my thing is, if these banks are receiving funding from the government to provide HUD housing and things of that nature to actually bring minorities in, and they're not doing that, their funding should be pulled. I believe that banks like that fall in the FDIC should have their status revoked. I believe that for a bank to truly learn its lesson, it must be given the same death penalty as giving it a college football team. Because here's the one thing: banks get in trouble all the time. They pay fines. Corporations get in trouble. Stock market with the SEC, pay fines. Very rarely do we ever see jail time or anything of an extreme nature to those in the financial sector. Why? Because money can dang near buy you out anything. And do not get me wrong, I keep saying this, that yes, the appraisal issue, because we did cover that story of where one couple used their Caucasian friend for the same house, and it got closer to 110. I think it was 110,000 more than what the black couple got when it was appraised. So again, it is shocking enough that we are seen as anything more than cash cows, which you would think only in the consumer sense, but not in the homeowner sense, because let's be honest, there are those in the financial sector that would rather have minorities being renters than homeowners. Because again, renters is always going to be that residual cash flow, while homeowners, you only have them on the hook for maybe 10 to 15 years. And the last thing that they want for some people, and some I won't say for all people in the financial sector, but for those that do, would rather prefer seeing minorities being constantly paying out for rent and keeping the lights on for themselves, versus banks like City National, like Wells Fargo, like TD Bank, which is another bank that got caught doing this. The penalties need to be more severe. They do. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts around it. But until that day comes, unfortunately, we're stuck with it. The last two stories I got, guys, before we get to our feel good segment, again, is another thing that I just don't know how I feel about this one. This is about the Trump Organization, and that they finally did get sentenced. Aside from the CFO seeing jail time, well, just like I talked about, those in the financial sector don't really see jail time. They see fines.
Where the Trump Organization has just been sentenced following its conviction of tax fraud. The Trump Organization has just been ordered to pay a $1.6 million fine. The company says it will appeal. Earlier this week, the only individual charged in this scheme, the company's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, was sentenced to 5 months in jail. Joining us now is NBC's investigative correspondent, Tom Winter. Tom, good morning. What's the latest?
Good morning, Jose. $1,610,000 to be precise, the maximum fine that could have been imposed on the Trump Organization and the Trump Payroll Corporation for their now no longer alleged, but in fact convicted crimes, all centering around Alan Weisselberg, as you suggested, and as you said, now serving time at Rikers Island here in New York City for an effort to effectively pay a less amount of money on their payroll taxes, on their what they would have to put forward as far as Medicare taxes that come out of the paychecks, in this effort to give Weisselberg the luxury apartment, the luxury cars, pay for tuition for his grandkids, all in an effort to really make Alan Weisselberg's life easier to commute to and fro the Trump Corporation and to act as its CFO. You see him there rather between the former president and his son Eric. So that's what this means as far as today, imminently for the Trump Corporation. I think now you have to look at this in the totality of what the former president and his company faces, and that at least in the immediate term is nothing in New York State from a criminal perspective. There's no longer any cases outstanding filing against him. Of course, there's the very broad civil case brought by New York's Attorney General, which alleges a whole host of fraud and financial type crimes, but only on the civil side. So it's not really something that will impact the company or the former president or his children from a criminal perspective. Now, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office says that this investigation remains ongoing. Of course, they have the former president's taxes. They were the first agency or law enforcement group to have them, going to the Supreme Court twice and winning their arguments there after Trump's attorneys tried to thwart their subpoena for those documents. So where this case goes is still a bit of a question, Jose. Michael Cohen suggested on our colleague Nicole Wallace's show earlier this week that he expects a call from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. That felt like a little bit more than a hunch. So we'll just have to see where this case goes from here and see whether they want to talk to him, whether they want to talk to him about those Stormy Daniels payments. That could be interesting, though no legal analyst has been able to provide me with a state charge that could be potentially bought over that course of conduct.
Okay, so long story short, it didn't. I get it. Okay. First and foremost, I get it. I get it. You can only go so far, but on charges of fraud, I mean, a lot of people are sitting there saying, but nope, the only person that goes to jail is CFO. The organization themselves are only paying $1.6 million, the max they can pay in fines. Unfortunately, that is the law. I think that, the more I think about it, it's like, you could just dissolve the Trump organization. You could, the maximum fine is the maximum fine is the maximum fine. But this goes back into what I said, that in the financial world, there doesn't seem to be any real life deterrence to keep people from doing it again. Now, of course, this comes from Trump organization, falsifying payroll, falsifying, and then again, I got to keep this separate. In the Trump organization, it was about payroll issues, payrolls, Medicare, what they were paying to the government. That's what they got caught on. Keep in mind, the investigation with Trump about, blowing up his appraisal rates on his properties, things of that nature, that still falls under him. So for a lot of people that are wondering, well, what about this, and this? I said they're keeping that a separate case. Keeping also the CFO did turn state's evidence. So as the analyst did say, the case still ongoing. I believe that Trump and them, if this is, whether it be this case or the other multiple lawsuits that Trump's going on right now, it is almost bound that one of them is going to take him down. It just seems that way. But we will have to sit there and see what happens. But yeah, it does sting a little bit that after all said and done, another financial group has to do nothing but pay a fine, and that's it. But our last story, we get to our feel good segment, guys. George Santos. How can I put this ever so nicely? It's just like when Elon Musk went on Twitter and said, hey, do you guys think I'm doing a good job? Yes or no? And if it's bad, I'll leave. Yeah. Santos, a man who lied on his resume to be a politician and got elected, he tried the same route. Didn't work as well as he thought it did.
Congressman George Santos today basically saying he doesn't care what some of his fellow Republicans want. He's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Listen.
I came here to serve the people, not politicians and party leaders, and I'm going to do just that. I wish well all of their opinions, but I was elected by 142,000 people. Until those same 142,000 people tell me they don't want me, we'll find out in 2 years.
Keep in mind, those 142,000 people voted for him before that New York Times investigation broke that found he lied on his resume while running for office about where he worked, where he went to school, etc. And while more of his colleagues on Capitol Hill are now, this week, today, calling for his resignation. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who, remember, is only leading a Republican conference that has a razor-thin majority in the House, is not ready to jump on the step-down train just yet, let's call it.
The voters of his district have elected him. He is seated. He is part of the Republican conference. There are concerns with it, so he will go before ethics. If anything is found to be wrong, he will be held accountable exactly as anybody else in this body would be.
Joining me now is Ali Vitale. And Ali, Kevin McCarthy says Santos is going to go through the ethics committee process. So, okay, what does that even mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, Hallie, we're probably not going to hear too much about that until they come up with a recommendation. And the reason I say that is because these kinds of things are notoriously done behind closed doors. The ethics committee is evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. And look, they could recommend a fine after they look into things. They could even recommend that he be expelled from Congress, but they don't have the power to do that. That would require a 2/3 majority vote on the floor of the House. It doesn't seem like there's much of an appetite right now for this. The thing that I keep hearing from Republicans that I talk to is Democrats didn't object to Santos being seated, and so he's here now. Even if people are saying that they think he should resign, which several of his Republican colleagues and most of the New York delegation is, it's not changing, clearly, his mindset around this.
Tell me about the way that this plays out, though, because one thing that I've heard from Democrats I spoke with, as you know, one member of leadership today who said, hey, man, this is basically a Republicans' mess. They got to clean it up. Republicans have a really tight margin, as we said, right? Like there is a political incentive for them, for Santos to stay in the conference. This question has come up about, well, if he can't be trusted to like tell the truth about his resume, like maybe you can't trust him with key intel, national security secrets, et cetera. It's the balancing act that Republicans are walking here.
When you were talking to Congressman Jim Clyburn earlier, I was struck by this, and then earlier in the day when Hakeem Jeffries said it, the idea that this is Republicans' mess, they should clean it up. Of course, Democrats would like them to do that, not just because this is clearly someone within the Republican ranks who lied about his resume and has a whole slew of other ethical and frankly legal concerns that are mounting around his campaign finances, where the money came from, how it was dealt with, what was reported or wasn't. All of these are open questions that other entities much larger and with bigger teeth than Congress are looking into right now. But the political concerns are critical here. I mean, you talk about the fact that the Republican majority is so slim already. That numbers game that we were watching McCarthy play all last week in order to become speaker, that's the numbers game he's going to be playing over the course of the next 2 years in trying to get anything done. You look at the map and the demographics on the ground in New York, in this Long Island area of the state, this is a place that demographically tilts more blue based on the way that things were in 2020. It was a pro-Biden area of the map. That's going to be something that factors in here as well, because if this were to go and it's just an open seat, a total free-for-all, those dynamics of the demographics, plus the fact that it would be viewed in many ways as a referendum on Santos, and clearly we've had our reporters on the ground there, voters on the ground are not too fond of him. Democrats have a lot of reason to feel confident about how they would do there. I mean, you got to imagine, Hallie, the millions of dollars that would get poured into this part of New York. All of us would be camped out there covering it. It's not something that Republican leaders want to leave to chance. And that's probably another reason why they're not banging down the door saying, yeah, he should resign. We're with the state party.
Ali Vitale, live for us there on Capitol Hill. It's
okay. So to sum this all up, George Santos, again, I keep saying this all the time. If people like George Santos can literally and figuratively lie their way to a political office seat, then every job going forward should not require any experience. Just throwing that out there. But yes, I love the fact that he said, well, 142,000 people voted for me, and if they say they don't want me here, then I'll leave in 2 years. Very smart of him to say that, because number one, at this point, since he has been sworn in, unless he has been convicted of murder or something in that situation that removes him from office, that's the only way he can come out soon. Or if a motion is brought to the House to where 2/3 of his own party will have to basically be in favor of this, even though all the Democrats can sit there and say, yes, we want him out. If 2/3 of his own majority party doesn't do it, then of course nothing happens. And my personal favorite, well, what about Kevin McCarthy? Kevin McCarthy needs every vote he can get. Keep in mind, this is the same man that ran for House Speaker in a record 15 times. He is the only man in history that has ran for House Speaker more than 9 times. He is alone at 15. You got to remember, for 14 times, members of his own party wouldn't vote for him, 20 of them to be exact. But one by one, they finally came forward and affirmed this man to be Speaker of the House. And now you're telling him that one of the people that voted for him is not legit. Do you think for 1 second that this man's gonna sit there and be like, no, you're exactly right. We need to get rid of him. Get rid of his power? I mean, let's just be honest. Yes, if Santos was lost, does that mean that, the GOP lose majority? Absolutely not. The GOP is still in firm majority of the House, but it weakens them ever so slightly because, again, the GOP have a razor thin majority in the House. Democrats still have the Senate and the presidency, but don't expect Republicans to cut their own heads off regardless of how the person got there, because, again, they need all the help they can get. So not really surprised by that. It's funny how they sit there and say, well, he's going to be meeting with the ethics committee and we'll go from there. He was just found lying on his resume. He's about to face the ethics committee and do what? Say he didn't do it? He misspoke? That, I put down the college I wanted to go to, not where I actually went to? What could he possibly say that will not get him fined or, some sort of punishment from the ethics committee, which, by the way, full of GOPs. It's like going to a firing squad and all they have is Nerf guns. Just saying. But we're going to go ahead and move on, guys, to our feel-good segment, because usually how the Frack got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make use of faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, hump day. We're going to get you to Friday, which is Thursday, and we hopefully will put you on some good vibrations with this story about history in the making, where HBCU Fisk University has its own gymnastics team. I have got to pronounce words better. Actually competing in an NCAA tournament. And yes, it is a beautiful thing.
In Las Vegas this past weekend, when gymnasts from Fisk University chalked up to become part of the first historically black college university team to compete in an NCAA women's gymnastics event. It was a mere 14 months ago when Fisk University committed to building a collegiate gymnastics program right from the ground up. And in a sport where the number of black gymnasts are increasing in large part due to Olympic giants like Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles, this groundbreaking team is really something special. And so I want to bring in Fisk University gymnastics team member Jordan Cromartie and Fisk University gymnastics head coach, athletic director, Corrine Tarver. Thanks both for being here. Congratulations. What a day. I'm really glad we're doing this story. Jordan, I understand you had a big hand in making this happen. How did it go? How did that go down? A conversation with your aunt and uncle? Is that what I understand?
Yes, sir. Thanksgiving last year, my uncle kind of sat me down at the table and was basically just like, so where are you going to school? And he is a Fisk alum, so he was kind of just like, you should come to Fisk, you should come to Fisk. And I was just like, I've spent my whole life trying to make it on a collegiate gymnastics team, so I wouldn't come to Fisk unless they had a program or something for me to do. But I was looking at so many other schools, and during that conversation, he was just like, okay, like, watch me make it happen. And a couple months later, it ended up happening. Yeah.
It's great. It is. It's fantastic and a real landmark. Corrine, I wanted to ask you, if I may. You have a background, obviously one of the first gymnasts, black gymnasts, to compete and succeed at this level. And I must say, Fisk, a great old American institution of higher learning. I'm surprised it took till now. So, what does it mean to be coaching this team at this moment?
It's actually pretty exciting, but it's also a long time coming. And as you said, it's something that I think a lot of people, it's one of those, really, there's not a team at an HBCU? Oh, and just people kind of thought that it was already there. So it is a long time coming, something that should have happened a long time ago. However, it's here now, so that's what's most important.
And Jordan, how's it feel being part of this team? Or what are your events? And this debut meet in Las Vegas, and what do you think makes the team so important? How you guys doing on this?
I feel like being part of the team, it's still really surreal. I feel like I still don't know how much of an impact like we're making on the world. I kind of just still feel like I'm part of like a collegiate team, which is crazy, but it's going to be really fun in the future to see like what happens. My events are, for this year, I'm pretty much focusing on floor and beam. I had surgery last April, so I'm not 100% cleared yet to do all four.
For sure. Well, Corinne, what's the goal here? You know, I mean, this is a groundbreaking event. As you said, a long time coming. What's your goal for your team?
Well, honestly, I want the team to go out there every single competition, do the best that they're capable of doing, do their job, and walk away feeling like they put everything out there. They left everything on the mat, as they say. And as far as overall, I'm hoping that we are a blueprint for other HBCUs to add a gymnastics program.
All right. Well, it's a great day for gymnastics, for Fisk, for the country, and good luck to you guys, to your team. By the way, with Fisk University, what's your mascot? What's the team name?
We're the Bulldogs.
All right. Well, go Bulldogs, right? Thanks very much, Jordan Cromartie. Good luck to you, Corinne Tar.
I'm sorry. Look, you can tell when the anchor person has never heard of Fisk University. I have not seen that much stumbling and that much trying to find words since 3-6 Mafia won the Oscar for Hustle and Flow. Great day for Black people in that sense. If you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and watch it. All jokes aside, though, it is groundbreaking to actually see Fisk University have their own gymnastics team and compete in the NCAA. I keep saying this all the time. Gymnastics is a sport that Black people can dominate. I'm not just talking about women, boys too. I always sit there and said, until we get past the stigma of gymnastics, oh, well, you don't want to be seen as this, and this. Do you understand that there are some powerful dudes that do gymnastics? Look, for you to be able to do flips and hangs and the clothes and the rings, you got guys who arm strength. I'm trying to get in shape, but you got guys there whose core, leg, and arm strength is ridiculous. Balance beam, forget about it. I mean, the thing about that's my wish one day. My wish one day for men's gymnastics, I would love to see Black guys go in there and dominate. Because let's be honest, we do that in almost every sport. And you don't think we're not going to do that in NASCAR? We're coming for that mess too. But again, I just want to give that, like I said, I just love to see us branching out more into other areas besides football and basketball, because we honestly, truly could do so much more. And again, I just think that's a beautiful thing. I really do. But it's just funny as hell to watch an anchor person stumble. Well, what mascot are you guys? How did you not do any background before you started talking to these people? And them's a breaks, I guess, but congratulations, Fisk. But anyway, that's going to do it for our podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do get out of here, do some shameless plugging as usual. I wanted to shout out my boy First Vaughn, BigBZA on all socials. You can definitely check him out here, as well as TikTok, as he usually does his What is Big BZ Thinking, along with his beats. Beats are for sale, but definitely check him out, BigBZA on all socials. Also, I have got to be better. I have so many people start shouting out now that's not even funny. Shout out to guys at Blurred's Eye View. You can check them out on YouTube and on Facebook at Roomful of Blurreds, at Mayhem Media, also on YouTube and Facebook. Check them guys out as well. I promise I'll have a better graphic to have everything on there, so it's a lot easier for me to get through there. Of course, for myself, you can find me on all socials, BlackVice447. I usually post everything that I watch, read, or play, even do gym stuff, because sometimes I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I cannot stress this enough. My one wish is to inform and educate. Inform, of course, because this podcast is about, but also at the same time, unity. It's like we could pull together and really unify and come together and just do more in 2023. That's my wish, honestly. Oh, before I almost forgot this. The link that you see at the bottom, let me make that just a wee bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take you to the link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit Podcast, and of course the Off Limits Podcast. Definitely check them out on YouTube and Facebook. Like and share, let people know about it. Let me know what you think about it, because I'm trying to make these three things great at the same time. Want to know what you guys think, because I mean, this is fun therapy for me, but I want it to be, depending on which podcast you want, at least entertaining for you. Now, that also being said, guys, again, COVID, RSV, its variants, it's rough out there right now. And there are going to be some places that require a mask. I highly recommend just to keep one on you, especially if you're going to be traveling, you're going to be in high traffic areas. Please wear a mask when you travel. If you feel sick, please stay home. If it does get worse, please go to your local emergency room, because we are still in a pandemic. COVID may not get mentioned that much as it used to, but it's still out there. And, you know, instead of us living with it, we can get past it as we've gotten past every other pandemic. It's just that everybody has to do their part. That's the big thing. So protect yourself. You can protect others. That's all I'm saying. The absolute last thing that I have to say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allowed you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that would have affected us back then, but we are for the better for it now. Like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black 4-star military general in the armed services. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys, and take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.